On this episode of AVWeek, AVIXA says Pro AV will hit $325 billion by 2024. Is the future of AV software and doing better for everyone in the AV industry? All that and more. Next on AVWeek.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
This is AVWeek, episode 410, recorded Friday, June 28th, 2019. The future of AV.
Support for AVNation is brought to you by
Shure, sound extraordinary.
And by Kramer, AV Beyond the Box. And by Christie Digital.
This is AVWeek, your weekly wrap-up of audio-visual news and information. My name is Tim Albright. I am your host. I would say that I just flew in from Orlando, but that would be a lie. It happened 2 weeks ago. We took some time off, gave you 2 episodes of Live from Infocom. So this is our first show back in the studio. So with us to discuss the news and information we have gathered this week, first and foremost, Kaylee Melton from AVI SPL in Southern California. Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Also with us is a buddy, Mr. Luke Jordan from Electroacoustics in Fort Worth, Texas. Welcome, sir.
Hey, man. Thanks for having me back. How you doing?
Absolutely. And last but not least, actually, Michael and Kaylee both are first-timers, at least on this show. Michael Peebler from Atlas IED, also from the Dallas-Fort Worth, Texas area. Welcome, sir.
Thanks, Tim. Glad to be here.
Absolutely. All right, let's kick this off. This may be the very first story we've ever done from the website Medium. If you're not familiar with Medium, Medium is a great, actually, resource. Lots of really smart people just take time to write on Medium on a variety of subjects. Folks like Jeff Bezos has written on there. Folks that you would think would be writing blogs use Medium as a resource. So the person who wrote this one, his name is Andrew Davis, and Andrew is a programmer at Ignite CSG. Andrew writes about quote unquote software eating AV. He uses the Mark Andreessen quote, software is eating the world, to start off this piece. In the article, Davis outlines the trajectory, as he sees it, of the audiovisual industry. In short, the only product will be the transducers, quote unquote, cameras, mics, speakers, and displays. Everything else will live on the network in some way. He paints what could be a bleak picture of the future if you're not prepared, as he says. Davis recommends getting your programming chops up to speed with Java, Python, etc. The article actually made the rounds through a number of people, some AV professionals I respect, folks like Chris Netto and David Danto passed it around. Luke, I want to start with you on this. As one of the 2 integrators in this, as an industry, what are we to do if Andrew Davis is correct and we are heading to a world in AV where there is no middleware, but just peripherals?
I think the first thing is you got to do the peripherals really well.
Okay.
I agree that the transducers aren't going away. Microphone, speakers, acoustics, all of that has to be done just near perfect every time. I do agree with the article as a whole that you are seeing a lot of networked audio, video. Dante's doing video now, AV over IP. Things are living in the cloud, and I think you are seeing a lot of IT managers really changing a lot of their internal policies for whose network things live on and what is being communicated and passed around and who's got access. And so that's all being rewritten. So I do think it's definitely moving that way. And I think, you see a lot of manufacturers or a few manufacturers are starting to move into that development side to support that need. But I think the critical part that has to go hand in hand with that is you can currently still do AV without the software side. And so if you're going to move into that software defined space, the physical elements that can't change, like speakers, mics, cameras, everything that's mentioned, that has to be executed perfectly. And it's all got to work hand in hand.
All right. Michael, Luke mentioned the manufacturers. What do manufacturers do? I mean, do you guys focus on the transducers? You guys, Atlas sells several of those. Do you focus on those and make sure you do those really, really well, but also make sure that you have the software in the back end to support it?
Atlas ID, as a typical example, we've got the endpoints, right? We've got the transducers, the speakers on the end, but they're all being controlled and managed by hardware applications that require software programming. And we're one of many, many manufacturers that require or have a similar model. And so this transition to software driving the endpoints is already in full swing. And it's not going to happen tomorrow. It's going to happen over time. But as a manufacturer, we and most others are already on that transition.
All right, Kaylee, you've got a unique position, at least from the rest of us three. You've worked for both manufacturers and integrators as well. So when it comes to this view of the future, how do we get both manufacturers and integrators together, and honestly the designers that kind of start everything right after they get done doing a site survey? They then have to change their process, I guess, from thinking about starting with middleware, which when I was a designer, that's where we would start, is how many endpoints and outpoints did we have, to really focusing on the peripherals, I guess.
So I want to start by saying it was a very well written article, but I think it does a disservice to ignore the future of technology and the new products that are being developed, that are being thought of. You can talk about endpoints and endpoints and how do we design around what is here currently, but without considering there is so much future tech that's still being developed, that's new things that haven't been seen before, that haven't been shown, that will be taken into consideration. And yes, software is a giant piece of it. And yes, programming is integral and imperative if we're going to talk about future state, but you can't ignore that things are changing. And I think that was more what the article was trying to talk about. Don't stick in the past and get stuck thinking that all you have are what's been done before. Yeah. And how do you make that better? You have so much new stuff coming out every single day.
No, that's a really good point, is the fact that we still don't know what's going to come next, honestly, to be quite frank. You really don't. So
the needs are changing and developing every day as well. And in order to meet those needs, yes, we're going to have to develop and change and write new programming and change our focus to be customer and client focused.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
One of the things that I think is an interesting shift is I'm getting a lot of requests from end users asking if we go with this solution that you've recommended, will we have the ability to edit code, make changes on our own, or do I have to rely on you? Do I have to call you out and pay expensive fees for you to do all that? Even if I'm doing it remotely, they're starting to beef up their own internal staff, and they're wanting to get end users certified and be able to take care of all that. And so as we shift towards standard programming languages, I think you're going to see a lot of the end users grow with that, and they're going to want to be able to do that themselves, and that is going to cut out a lot of the integration market. There's a project I bid on recently where they were going to hand us code that had already been written, and they were going to ask us to just make whatever modifications was needed to control the peripherals that were specified, but that the base programming code was already going to be written and handed over to us if we won. So I even bid specifications and control design is just going a completely different direction from where it's been.
Yeah, we've seen that in higher education. I'm sorry, Kaylee. All I was going to say is we've seen that in higher education for years. Market that I've worked a lot of. It went from being it was an AV guy to now it's a classroom technology guy that does AV and is doing everything on the network. So they're very comfortable on the IT side, and now they're getting certified. And I've talked to many of those departments and on university campuses, globally. And the only reason in many cases they're still using integration is because of the scale of the labor over the summer. But it's not because they feel like they're bringing as much value anymore. And That's not a shot. It's just these guys are getting really educated. They're going to all of our shows. I haven't seen the data from this year, but the year before, 40% of the attendees at InfoComm were end users. They're going and they're attending the same classes. They're getting CTS certified. They're getting trained, and they're taking that responsibility themselves.
We're seeing the same thing in the industry where we're providing integration services and being asked to work directly with their programmers to write our DSP hooks, to put the control code together, that it's not all on us. It's not all specified by us. We can make suggestions, but it's more custom fit to what they want.
Oh, very cool. Very cool. All right. Our next story actually comes to us from commercial integrator AVIXA's IOTA, which stands, IOTA is the industry outlook and trends analysis. Global summary predicts the pro AV industry will reach $325 billion by 2024, up from $247 billion in 2019. The increase, according to AVIXA, is driven by rising GDP throughout the world. Asia Pacific has officially overtaken the U.S. as the largest market, putting the U.S. at number 2, U.S. Sitting at $89 billion, and Asia Pac at $90 billion. The one takeaway I want to point out about this article, though, is it references kind of our previous story a little bit in the fact that they're forecasting $10 billion in cloud services for the AV industry. So, I don't know if AVIXA read, Mr. Davis's post beforehand, but very apropos. Michael, we'll start with you on this. How do manufacturers, or what do manufacturers do to kind of make sure that they're capitalizing on this projected growth that AVIXA is forecasting?
Well, first of all, I think most of us try to really think globally today, right? We have to look at, when we're looking at product development, the world of certifications and licensing and all the things required to get the product out globally has become a standard part of the program or product development process. And we have to continue to look at the management and expansion of our channel. But we have to understand that a lot of our customers' needs are the same depending on the verticals we're selling into. So we have to look at addressing that and then localize to the best degree possible as a manufacturer. So if I'm selling into schools, as an example, my message to schools in the United States may be different to my schools in France, where it's very socialized as far as funding, but might be very different to China or somewhere else in Asia Pacific. So I've got to continue to rely on that local reference to what verbiage, what wording, what key points are going to help drive and develop product to be appropriate for those markets. And then the last thing I'd say is we have to keep looking at how we distinguish ourselves. One of the interesting things in the article it talked about is mass notification and the expected continued growth of the demand for mass notification because of security and safety around the world. And that's something we've done. We really, instead of focusing as much on what goes in the room, we're focusing on what goes on the campus. Because the bucket for keeping everybody safe tends to be a pretty big bucket today. And so we have to continue to look to find our niche.
Yeah, absolutely. Kaylee, working for AVI-SPL as a global integrator, how do global integrators take a look at this and make sure that they're capitalizing on the various areas?
Well, we're global integrators selling to global companies. You've got a company who wants their office in Brentwood to look the same as their office in Milwaukee and have the same level of service, so that if somebody moves from office to office, things still look the same, and there isn't a growth and learning curve. We're selling to everyone. We're selling something that works no matter where you're at and no matter what you're doing. That way there is no learning curve. No, well, I know how to use the touch panel here, but I don't know how to use the touch panel there because it's set up differently. It's the ability to walk into a room and already know how to use something, and diversifying that way and pushing standards is what works. Makes things easier for everyone involved.
Yeah, absolutely. Luke, as a local integrator, how do you take a look at this global forecast and make sure that you guys are doing the best that you can to capitalize at a local level?
I'm moving to India. No, I think what our clients look to us is to have our pulse on the global market and understand where trends are going and what meets their ROI, whether that's financial savings, increased efficiency, ease of communication with their clients, or even just communicating to people in the room in the most effective way, looking forward. So I look at this as trying to understand where the global economy is going and what trends are driving that, what innovations are driving that, and then making sure that we're not putting in yesterday's solution, but that we are advising them and guiding them on how to spend their capital and how to stay up with the rest of the world so they don't get left behind, and then just do that really well at a local level as a trusted partner.
All right, very good. Final story here comes to us from SCN and our friend Brandy Alvarado. Brandy is one of the driving forces in our online community, as well as with the Women of AVIXA Council. She's actually the current chair. She wrote a piece in SCN about two events in the AV industry that were pivotal to her life. One was positive and one was incredibly negative. The positive was the encouragement she's had surrounding her becoming the Women of AVIXA chair, the encouragement she's gotten through the community. The other was at an Infocom event a number of years ago, and she was assaulted at an industry event, a word that she says, quote unquote, she doesn't use very lightly. The article goes on to highlight other areas in and around the Infocom show that still occur to women in this industry. Before we start with the questions, and we're putting a link to the article as well, personally, as somebody in this industry, as a man in this industry, I want to say to Brandy and to every other woman who has ever had anything happen to them, whether it's been assaulted or you've been shot down or told to shut up and just stand there and hold the product, which is one of the examples that Brandy uses in her article, or mansplained something, because there are smart people, way smarter than I am. Two of my favorite programmers in the world happen to be female, and they are wonderful people and continue to educate folks. This shouldn't happen. Just flat out shouldn't happen is what I want to say. And we are equals in this industry. I don't care what gender you are, what color you are, what religion, what race, what belief you are. We are all equal in this industry, and we should treat each other so. Honestly, I'm going to start with Kaylee on this and flat out just ask straight up, very simple. What can and what should people who are in, I guess, the majority, or just to say, what should men do in this industry to support women and to prevent things like this that happen to Brandy?
Oh, that is a big question. To support us, honestly, I'd love to see more women in leadership in this industry. The ratio is unfortunately poor when it comes to AV, when it comes to construction, when it comes to integrators and manufacturers alike. The number of women I see out there is far outweighed by the number of men. And if you don't have women in your meetings, if you don't have women in your offices, then you don't have those opinions, those knowledge bases, those outlooks, or even the design perspective. Hotel rooms are designed for men. Bathrooms are designed for men. The temperature control in office rooms is designed for men. I freeze to death. Consider us. Remember that there is another opinion out there.
I would just say that part again about the hotels that are designed. You make a very good point about the fact that not just hotels, but also probably conference rooms as well, that spaces that are designed for folks that are, they're designed for men, and a lot of times the design considerations aren't taken for other people. I
cannot tell you how many times I walk into a hotel room and go, oh, look, no full-length mirror. Who is this made for? It's not made for me. Or a fixture that is 6 feet high when I am not. How am I even supposed to reach that, let alone work with that in a room?
Absolutely. Mr. Jordan, we'll come with you on this. What can we as an industry do to be better?
I think the first step is what Brandy did, what Kate did on Twitter this last week. I think is just be vocal about, see something, say something. I think what Brandy put in the article, what happens is there's a level of uncomfort about saying what's happening and calling someone out, and I understand that to a degree. I have been sexually harassed, just catcalled, and you don't want to make waves. You don't want to call attention to yourself. And when no one is called out in that way, it just perpetuates the idea that I can get away with this, or maybe someone doesn't even realize that they are obscenely inappropriate in their actions and their words. And so I think to plant a flag and say this is not okay, this is not who we are. I think that's very important. I think the other one is listen. So someone came out on Twitter this last week and said, "Hey, there's this incident at Infocom. This is what happened." And someone else kind of chimed in and said, "Man," they tagged Dave Labuscus at AVIXA and said, "What are you going to do about it?" And he said, and he directly responded. He says, "I'm here. I'm listening." Someone made the idea to put something in the AVIXA app for the trade show, to where you can report that, and that can go to the staff that is in charge of that show and is providing that experience, and they can directly respond to that. So I was very encouraged that AVIXA is listening and responding to that. Dave's response was, "I don't know what we're going to do yet, but we're this is on our front burner, and we are aware of that." So, and then the third one, I think, is just creating a community where people are watching for that. So as a man, I know that this is something I need to be looking for, that if I see somebody that looks uncomfortable, instead of wondering, I hope they're okay, is just having the gumption to walk up and insert myself into that conversation. And if nothing's happening, I'm a fun social guy and I get to make new friends. And if something is happening, I can read that social cue and I can take someone out of a bad situation, or even tell someone that they've had too much and it's time to leave. So I think people need to be bold and to just insert themselves into that situation.
I second that. Men who are aware are our best advocates. And we appreciate you for that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, Mr. Peeble.
I think the other thing too is I went to the AVIXA Women's Breakfast as well this summer, and the CEO of Sure, I'm going to say her last name wrong, so I'm just going to say Christine. It was amazing. They said, how many women in the industry are in a STEM field? And they weren't trying to say, well, if you're in marketing or support or something that's not technical, they weren't saying that was bad, but they were highlighting how few women, even in a women's breakfast, had a STEM role or background. Christine was a engineer for Sure since '89 and had worked in a technical STEM role the whole time. And she's fantastic, and she's a great leader. She was a great presenter, carried herself very well, very professional, had great insights. And just don't go into what you were saying, Kaylee. She had such a great perspective and voice and way of thinking about things. As a man, it was refreshing to hear that in the industry and to be a fly on the wall and be a part of that. And so I think the other thing, I think the AVIXA Foundation is working on this too, in NSCA Ignite, is how do we highlight the need for women, and not just filling a quota, but there is a need for those skills, perspectives, resources, and actively working to promote and grow the female sector of the industry.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Mr. Peebler, same kind of question. What can we do to be better?
Yeah, so I bring a pretty personal perspective to this. Obviously, my wife is in the industry, right? So I bring that right off the bat as someone who's out there, and Luke knows her well as well, and a very, very strong personality, very strong woman. But I want to step back for 1 second and say, while I grew up in a house of all women, my father passed when I was very, very young. So I grew up with kind of two sisters and my mom. And so I've always been very, very partial, very protective, for lack of a better term. I think our industry has a bigger issue than just a lack of women and a disrespect for women. I think our industry has a challenge of looking the same, period. We need people of different races. We need people of different shapes and sizes. We need more young people. We need more. I really think there's a major issue there. We got a lot of people who are cycling company to company, and I know that may kind of be a hot opinion, but and people are hiring them because of their experience instead of saying, you know what, I should go get somebody younger and train them. I should go get, we should go recruit more engineers that are women. We should go, if you want to change the perspective, change it from the ground up in the way that it's built. But I think, back kind of to, and I agree with everything Kaylee and Luke have said, first you've got to create the opportunity for awareness, right? So people have to be able to speak up without there being consequence for speaking up. You got to educate. 20 years as working for manufacturers, you got to educate people on what's right and what's wrong. I had an experience at Infocom this year where we were in setup and there was a young lady working in our booth, and I said, please, we both kind of hit a corridor at the same time, and we weren't both going to fit through the door at the same time. And I said, please, ladies first. And she looked at me and she goes, it's 2019. And I said, I'm sorry, my mom would have slapped me in the back of the head if I walked in front of you. I'm not trying to be disrespectful. I'm just being respectful. I'm from Texas, ladies first, right? I didn't have any other agenda, right? I was just being respectful. And so maybe I need to continue to learn, right? I didn't mean anything by it. I certainly didn't have another opinion. I was trying to be respectful. So, but I think you have to continue to educate not only people about what's right and wrong, but as a 51-year-old guy, continue to educate me if the rules are changing. Keep letting us know how the rules are changing, because there's no bad intent, right? And so and then there has to be consequence. Let's face it. There are things that happen and companies that gloss it over because, but he's our best sales guy, or he's a senior leader. There has to be consequences. If guys are breaking the rules and they're doing things that are unethical or wrong or making people feel violated or uncomfortable, they don't need to be in our industry. And there need to be consequences for those kind of behaviors. And I think we need to get more serious about that. And as a manufacturer and dealers and every other component in there, I think we need to put actions behind the words of we're going to do better and start making their consequences so people will act better. Anyway, that's me.
There's consequences, and there's also incentivizing people to report these things. The response that happened at AVIXA is wonderful and commendable, but that they didn't have something in place to begin with, that they didn't consider that to be a problem, says something about what they think of situations like that. How do you incentivize people to want to come forward, to want to say, hey, your best sales guy is also the worst person? Or whomever. Also incentivize people to want to come forward.
Absolutely, because right now, and Brandy in her article, she mentioned the fact that she did not say anything at the time, because there has been in the past backlash against women who have reported, not just in this industry but in other places, and the entire Me Too movement was kind of a watershed moment of these women coming forward, even though they hadn't said anything for years, because again, in those industries, there was backlash, there was retribution for saying something. So absolutely. All right, folks, that is going to do it for us. Thank you all so much. Miss Kaylee Milton from AVI-SPL, thank you. How do people get a hold of you or AVI-SPL?
They can most certainly find me on LinkedIn, Kaylee Milton.
All right, very good. Mr. Jordan, thank you, sir, as always. How do people get a hold of you or Electroacoustics?
Our website is eavi.com, And you can find me on Twitter at Luke Jordan EAVI.
All right, very good. And Mr. Michael Peebler from Atlas IED. Thank you, sir. How do people get a hold of you or Atlas?
Atlas is atlasied.com. Head us there anytime. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Twitter. I work with Gina, so I have to be very, very social in all platforms. So you can find me anywhere. If you can spell the last name, Pevelar, you're good to go.
And that would be Miss Gina Sansevero, who is also very active on social as well. For me, for Tim Albright, follow me on the Twitters. At this point, I'm still celebrating the fact that the Blues won their very first Stanley Cup championship ever. So actually got a coffee mug and but go by the website if you would please, avnation.tv, avnation.tv. You'll find this program and a host of others. While you're there, you can register for our very next webinar. Comes your way July 24th. The gang at State of Control will be joining me as we talk about APIs, user experience, and control. You can register for that. Also, while you're there, please check out our supporter section. These are the folks who help us financially, help us bring you AVWeek and Infocom coverage and ResiWeek and all the others. And Atlas IED is one of those. We thank them for their support. All that and more at avnation.tv. That's avnation.tv. Thanks so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching. That's all the time we have for AVWeek.